Book in a Bev. Welcome to the Black Parade, or another episode of the Book in a Bev podcast. All here in our matching shirts. Yay! And we're here for possibly the loosest and goosiest podcast ever. That's us. Mm-hmm. I wanted to say goose. I'm very sorry. Don't ask me why. Anyways, so we're back for book 2 of the Throne of Glass series, aka Crown of Midnight by Sarah J Maas. This will be our first lot of doing a part 1 and part 2 weekly because we are busy beaters. We just basically talk so much shit, so we really need to split it into. What are we drinking this week, ladies?
Oh. Well, at this point, we all know I'm drinking wine, so we won't stray from the narrative this week. That's it.
Look, I say that I'm drinking things and then I drink something else. I was like, I am drinking this week, which is, it looks like black liquid. It is actually Alizé with lemonade, and then I ran out of lemonade, added Mountain Dew, so it turned green, and then I added black gel colouring into this to make shadows inside it, so it would be like the shadows, you know, and now it's just black. So
it's Valg blood.
It's Valg blood, that's exactly right. So that's good. And then on top of that, this is what my actual drink, because that was actually supposed to be my drink for next book, but that's fine. My drink for this week is actually also going to be what I call pain and torture. Which, if you're watching the video, you can already see that I've got a giant jar of, it's actually the liquid for pussy shots, but it's called Porn Star because it's passion and vanilla liqueur.
It was awful.
Oh. And I'm going to shot it every time I feel an emotion. You know how usually I like scream and cry and things? This time I'm just going to drown my feelings. It's also Saturday night, so I can do this without writing myself off for work. So
it's going to be a big one. I am drinking what I'm calling the Archer Splits, which is my take on an Aperol Spritz because she killed Archer and splitzed his soul from his body.
Oh. Amazing.
Splitzed him in half.
She fucking did. Oh, that'll do, pig.
Oh. Oink. We said moo. We said moo in episode in book 1. Oink is episode 2.
We've killed Georgia.
I had a mouthful of alcohol. Fuck me.
So we made the mistake like we normally do, where we start talking and then we're like, shit, we've got a podcast to record. So we're going to rehash some of this for you guys. Ladies, what did we think of Crown of Midnight?
Right. This book shook me. We've taken a sharp turn away from the Twilight-esque love triangle and moodiness of book 1, and we're now surrounded by blood and plot twists, and I am here for it. I thought I loved Throne of Glass. Well, this book outdid that, and I have a feeling it's just going to get better, and I am so fucking excited. I am now fully on board Team Kale. Sorry, Style Lettuce, for that last episode. It's all right. I've come back. We've done a 360. I'm back to you now. Might I add, he clearly does love dogs because he dove through a bloody demon portal to save Fleetfoot. We can put that to bed.
He just said that he didn't like animals, but then he decided, actually, I really, really do like animals now, and it's not at all for the fact that it's because this woman that I really am attracted to likes dogs. No, it's not at all.
He did it out of the goodness of his heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yes, look, this book, it's just like world building and trauma, and my little shriveled up heart just can't take this, okay? But I love this book. I love it. It's so good. This entire fucking series, it's so fucking good. I'll say it from the rooftops. I'll scream it to the lands. I'll do it. But we basically fall in love with Kale in this book just to, like, unfall in love with him towards the end, you know, when the things start happening. We learn about Dorian's magic and his phantom hands, which is very delicious. And then our favourite girl from Ilway just dies. Dead, done, yeeted from the chat. And then just to top all of that off, Celaena is not actually Celaena. No, she is Aelin Ashriver Galathynius.
Princess of Genovia.
Princess of Genovia. Yeah, look, it's so fucking good. And as I said, it just goes on, it just fucks me up, and that's why I'm doing shots tonight.
This book to me is just magnificent. Chef's kiss. I love a story where it's like, oh, the tiny pieces are coming together and I've got like a map on my wall and there's thread connecting the dots and it's just very exciting. And the ending, obviously, the ending, like, so good. Words fail, and honestly, I'm just so excited for Ellie's reaction throughout this. Like, I'm just hyped. I'm ready. There is obviously a conversation happening online about Nehemia's death and think that Sarah J Maas is problematic because she killed off the only person of colour.
Oh.
I personally think that this book was written by a young teenager who probably had a lot of the books, the whole series probably, in fact, somewhat planned out in her head. And I just think that it's a fiction book. And you've got to kind of take what is in here with a grain of salt, if you will. And I am not a person of colour, so I have no right to, say how people of colour should feel and shouldn't feel. So that's just how I personally, me as an individual, as a Caucasian white woman, I suppose, feel.
I'm sure reading this in 2022 is very different from the time that she wrote it in as well. I can certainly see why that would be problematic if the only person of colour within the entire book is brutally murdered.
Yeah, it's published in 2013.
Okay.
So 9 years ago.
Yeah. And, like, we can just look at the zeitgeist from the past 9 years. Like, things are changing for the good, we hope.
I feel like sometimes we as readers forget that authors can write whatever books they want, whether or not they're good or not, or harmful or not, or whether or not they should even be published, that's a different conversation. But the author can write their book, and that sometimes when you're writing a book, the story comes to you and you know from word dot what happens to some person. You might not know everything, but you could have a particular thing. Nehemia could have been written from the word go that Sarah was planning that she was going to die.
And I mean, her death plays a huge influential role in the moments to come. And there are other people of colour in the series, are there not?
Yeah.
It's just later on.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also, in part, you've got to consider the context around who Sarah J Maas was at the time she was writing this book, the context of the world. Like, there's a whole discussion right now on TikTok about BIPOC characters being written by white authors. If we're wanting to talk about the context, let's talk about the full context.
Yeah.
She's growing with this series. Like, this is probably her second book ever. She grows.
It's really interesting.
And I feel like,
going to be people outraged with you for trying to depict a main character as a person of colour because you haven't lived their experience, which is a very valid point.
Very valid point.
That is problematic. But then if you have them as, side characters to perform a part of the plot, then that's also problematic as well. So I just...
Yeah, there's this notion that you should have a diverse cast in your book. And that's great. You should. I don't disagree with that. You've got to make sure you're obviously not speaking for something you haven't experienced, and that's fine. You're then just inserting characters of colour with no depth.
And then what's the point in having them in there at all? And then it's like, if you don't have them in there...
shallow, possibly bad representation characters that have no depth, that are just performative tokens. And again, we're all white women, so we're not going to tell BIPOC people how to feel or what to do.
Absolutely not, no.
I just don't know if the conversation is getting the outcome that we need.
No.
I guess it's just hard, like with this series especially. It's hard because she was a teenager when she was writing this. So I'm like, when I was a teenager, I don't know, would I have known what I know now?
When I was 17, I was trying to do better and I was trying to expand my worldview, but I was raised in a very white, very conservative community. I didn't have the exposure to things. I didn't have the language to know how to talk about things. And I didn't know I didn't understand. I didn't have the context or the knowledge. And it's different now. I feel like people who are 17 now are a lot more educated racially and culturally than we were like 9 years ago. And even just how the world has changed in 9 years, it's huge.
It is.
And I think, everyone is entitled to their own opinion about a series. And what might be, let's say, fine for us might absolutely not be fine for someone of colour. And that is absolutely fair and that's absolutely fine. Yeah, it's hard to speak on because, we're not people of colour. And
exactly.
Yeah, so I guess the whole... It's very much addressing the elephant in the room, I suppose, because it's like this has been a huge talk on Book Talk at the moment. So...
And you also see a lot of people who have a problem with this series this is one of their main points. As it goes on and as she got older, she tried to make amends and take steps to address that in a way that felt natural in the series. But yeah, it's the elephant in the room for this book, to be sure.
Yeah, nonetheless, I really love Sarah J Maas. Again, I'm not a person of colour, so I have no right to discuss on how they would feel about it, but I really love this series. So that's why I'm very excited to just get on into it.
Well, you know what interests me? The fact that there are some people out there, especially on Book Talk, who really do not like Sarah J Maas. Like, at all.
Yes.
They do not like any of her series.
They go hard.
And I'm sort of like, give me the books that you are reading them. Because if you think that you've got something better than this shit, give it to me. Because
this
I
is
really
cocaine to me.
Mm-hmm.
I really love, like, obviously I love Sarah J Maas. Her books, I will buy anything she puts out. I inhale it. They mean the world to me. And her characters mean a lot to me. Again, like, I'm a white woman. I will never try to speak or insert my opinion as more value than a person of colours, especially in racial matters. It's just not my place. So to clarify, we love Sarah J Maas. We are also white women. We're not going to try and speak for something we don't have experience in. If you would like to seek out the arguments on it and the discussion on it, go as you will. It is out there.
Interesting.
On that note, Crown of Midnight, Part 1, The King's Champion, starts with a good shimmy. And we love a good shimmy, albeit it's not normally up a drain pipe.
A bit of a shimmy. Oh, my titties.
A bit of a shimmy.
So my titties were like, blah, 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 blah.
Mine don't really move that much anymore.
I don't have enough to work with that.
Usually I don't, but it's all right. For some reason tonight they're feeling extra jiggly.
The book starts with Celaena shimmying up a drain pipe, breaking into a house, and you're like, oh no, is Celaena back to her assassinating ways? Because obviously at the end of book 1 she was the champion by the king. She's his assassin. It's this whole scene where she goes in, she creeps in with the storm, and she like scares this man in bed, and then it's like a fade to black, and you're like, ah. Next minute, Celaena is storming in to the throne room mid-council meeting, and everyone is scared of her. And, like, to be fair, I would be also scared of her if, like, she was carrying a bag with, like, a head in it. That's fair.
Yes.
That's a very valid concern. Fair. She bows for the king, and we get this quote. At the foot of the dais, always between her and the royal family, stood Cale Westfall, captain of the guard. Which, FYI, it's just a summary for Cale's life, because he's always between her and the royal family.
Oh, he really is. Well, Dorian isn't taking Celaena's line of work too well. But it's also kind of like, what did you expect, sir? You literally plucked her from a slave camp when you knew she was an assassin, and you put her into a competition to become the greatest assassin to work for your father. And now suddenly she's becoming an assassin, and he's like, weird.
He's like, how dare she?
The murder.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realise assassinating people involved murder. It's like, yeah. Anyway.
I thought they were just being sent to the farm.
Well, the king then asks Celaena to hunt down rebels. The first one being an old friend of hers, Archer Finn. And that just sounds like a character from Hunger Games. I don't know why.
Tangled.
You had the same thoughts?
Yes.
The blonde guy?
Yes. I don't know.
That's all I imagined Archer had.
Yes.
I don't know why.
It was bizarre.
Sam Calvin.
Finnick. That's who I was thinking of.
Yes.
Finnick from the Hunger Games.
Finnick. That's how I see Archer.
Yes, me too. Okay, good. I'm
glad. I will not stop my Finn from Tangled life. Okay,
that's right. I'm fairly sure he's described as having brown hair anyway, so you're actually correct.
It's like an auburny. Anyway. Well, Celaena vows to figure out who he is tied up with in all of this. And it's like, who is this man and what does he do? Turns out he does a lot of things, including with his penis. But that's okay.
In Dorian's point of view, he is super struggling. At first, I don't like the vibe he's giving off because he's all like, she's not who I thought she was. And he's like, she doesn't like pretty dresses anymore and she's wearing pants all the time. And I was like, just not about that vibe. But I also get it because she left him at the end of the book. Book 1, he was like, yes, romance, I'm going to give up everything for you. And she was like, actually, no.
Yeah, she did just kind
backtrack,
of be like,
redact.
no.
And he's struggling. He's trying to respect her wishes, but he's also still in love because he's a man with a big heart. He's just got so much love to
No
give.
one is shocked whatsoever by these twists of events.
Stale Kale, on the other hand, is understanding a bit better that Celaena has different personalities that she plays. She switches back and forth. So, like, the real Celaena is someone else, and this assassin is edgy. And someone
it doesn't stop.
Did you just say the assassin Celaena is edgy?
Yes, I did. She's edgy.
She's an 80-year-old woman.
She's edgy.
Not 80. She's edgy.
Not 80.
No, I said you're an 80-year-old woman because only old people say edgy.
Edgy. That's very true. That is very true.
She's hanging out with all the other youths and they're doing and she's listening to loud music.
Wearing black all the time.
This doesn't last very long though. Kale goes very much from one moment being like, yeah, woo, and then he's like, oh, wait, no.
Well, on that note, Kale does stress when she goes away for her missions, which is very cute. They hug afterwards without hesitation, which just means that they are bonded. We love to see it. We love to see it.
We do.
Celaena's being a little sneaky sausage and isn't actually killing her targets. She's just yeeting them from the continent and being like, go swim somewhere else.
Next chapter, Celaena is still having nightmares about what happened with Cain, and she ends up actually telling Nehemia about like her missions and what's going on, and Nehemia tells her that she must find a way to help her people as the king is just not doing anything. And Nehemia's just constantly throughout this entire book basically trying to get Celaena to help her people, help the slaves, not just look out for herself. It's basically an ongoing theme throughout this book. And then we shoot to the next chapter and Kale, shockingly, is catching feelings. Yes. Celaena and Kale talk about death and the personal cost of taking a life and they bond about it. Celaena tells Kale, you will never forget killing Cain, she said at last. And when her eyes met his heart pounded so hard he could feel it across his whole body. But I will never forget what you did to save me either. Which is just really, really sweet because he literally sacrificed his own mental health to save her because that's just fucked him.
And he's struggling with the fact that he had to kill Cain. Like, he's actually not okay.
No.
And the only person who can kind of comfort him is Celaena.
Anyway, that was kind of traumatic for me, so I'm going to do a shot.
Oh, please do. She's done it.
Oh, it's like cough medicine.
She's not happy.
That was 3 gulps.
That's a lot of swallowing.
That was like 3 shots.
In one. So, as a morning ritual between Kale and Celaena, they go for a little run.
Ew.
And it's quite sweet, although we'll never do that myself. No, you will not find me doing that, ever.
Fuck it up.
Nature. Anyway.
Nature.
So, the ladies of the court find Mr. Kale quite attractive when he's coming back from his runs covered in sweat and all drippy and wet.
Oh,
yes.
Yuck.
For which I would not. Has anyone smelt a sweaty man before? Not sexy. Here we are, he's sweaty, and the ladies find him attractive, so they're all standing in the garden watching them walk past. And Celaena's like noticing them, but she's also like, he's not noticing them, so it's fine. I'm not going to point it out to him and make it a situation when it doesn't have to be a situation. I'm like,
she's like, I'm not jealous, I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. They stumble upon Dorian, and he is walking with this weird friend of his named Roland.
I'm just so happy you guys said Roland because I was listening to a podcast and they called him Roland and I was like, what the fuck?
Roland.
No, it's Roland because you roll him up and you get rid of him.
You don't roll him up like a bowl inside your vagina. You roll him and flick him away. Well,
Who is stuffing what in their vagina and when? Where's my invite?
What are we rolling up?
Right. Well, turns out Roland is actually Dorian's cousin, and we hate him.
We do.
Celaena even thinks she wouldn't mind working with him, but not in the way Roland meant. Her way would include a dagger, a shovel, and an unmarked grave. I like the way she thinks. Dorian is then trying to make things work with Celaena, but she is not having a bar of it. This is the quote. Dorian takes a step closer, exposing his palms to her. Do you want me to fight for you? Is that it? No, she said quietly. I just want you to leave me alone.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Literally, in the last chapter, he was all contemplative about her killing people for a living, even though he handpicked her for a contest in which she would become his father's assassin. And now he's like, look, you made your feelings towards me very clear a few weeks ago, but are you sure you're not playing hard to get? Because, you know, that's sometimes what happens here. Girls they say no, but they mean another thing.
I mean, yes.
Do you mean?
They say, I'm not going to fuck you because as soon as I'm done being an assassin, I'm gone. Do they actually mean, yes, I want to serve as your queen?
Yes, exactly right. He's got his wires crossed.
I think he felt so strongly about Celaena that he was mistaking romantic love with just companionship love, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And lust too, yeah. But I mean, he gets lust from a lot of other things. Like he's
true.
He's a horny dog.
Yeah, I think he just needs a companion. That's his whole thing. I think his entire thing throughout this book is just companionship until something big happens later on. You know, there's all these things that go on. But
and when we think about it as well, at this stage, he's gone from Kale being like his best friend and then being inseparable to Celaena's essentially come between them and made this tension. So he doesn't have that person anymore at the moment.
No.
And he's then trying to put that love, that friendship love, onto Celaena. But really, he should just be gay with Kale.
That's exactly right. It would just solve all the problems, wouldn't it?
It really would. There would be no issues in this book at all. Or, I mean, other than the evil coming over their continent. But other than that, there would be no issues within the book.
We go into the next chapter, and Celaena is out spying on Archer, and we get this quote, which is, "It felt like she'd never left, as if she might look over her shoulder and find Sam Cortland crouching behind her," because she's on a roof, like, watching him.
I just fucking finished Assassin's Blade. I can't deal with that. I can't deal with this kind of trauma.
Celaena and Kale's friendship
sorry.
That is 3 shots.
3 shots
by chapter 5, Georgia.
Oh, fucking hell. So, Celaena and Kale's friendship is truly becoming something very beautiful that we are all enjoying. They spend a lot of time together studying or training, which is sort of like, are you studying and training or are you having flirtatious banter? Because we're here, all of it. There is this moment where she falls asleep and he's teasing her about her snoring, and it's all very, very cute, and I just want them to fall in love and just ride off into the sunset together, please.
Celaena actually tells Kale a little bit about her past, and she finds out that Wesley, an assassin that she used to know, killed the person who killed Sam Cortland. Celaena and Kale talk about Sam and Kale's ex-lover, Lithian. Don't know how to say that. We don't care. She's a hoe. Kale asks if Sam loved her, and we get this quote. "Yes, more than anyone had ever loved her. He'd loved her enough to risk everything, to give up everything. He'd loved her so much that she still felt the echoes of it even now."
Oh, even though they hadn't had sex
Pain. They literally hadn't fucked. When Celaena leaves, she bumps into like this weird hooded figure in the library with a sniffing problem.
Yeah,
that's fine. We don't find anything else about that.
No.
That's a really big shot.
It was just all very odd at that moment. Well,
yeah, you're like, okay.
You do you, boo. We will catch up with you later.
We'll catch up with you later.
Yes.
So Celaena then goes to the tomb, because why not? And she meets, wait for it, a talking door knocker. His name is Mort, and he has so much sass, and he is now my favourite character of the book. He essentially tells her she can't speak to Elena, but that Elena left her a message, which is, "If I could leave you in peace, I would. But you have lived your life aware that you will never escape certain burdens. Whether you like it or not, you are bound to the fate of this world. And as the King's champion, you are now in a position of power, and you can make a difference in the lives of many." And it's sort of like, now that I know who she really is, this is all making much more sense. But at this time, Celaena isn't really feeling like saving the world right now. So this news is kind of a bit like, okay, Elena, thanks for that. I just really wanted to get the fuck out of here in 4 years' time. But no worries, I'll just save the world while I'm at it. That's fine.
Literally.
Yeah. Not like I haven't had enough trauma.
It just gets worse.
We flash forward and Celaena ends up using Kale to like stage a meeting with Archer where they have this whole thing where they pretend they're lining up to go into a fancy cafe and then they just happen to stumble into him, and I loved it. I loved everything about that whole encounter. Celaena ends up convincing Archer to get dinner with her, but the whole time Kale is just watching on, silently brooding because he's so jealous. And we get this quote: "And the gods knew he had no claim on her. He'd seen the look on her face when Archer had mentioned Sam. He'd heard of Sam Cortland's death in passing. He'd never known that Celaena and Sam had crossed paths, that Celaena had ever loved that fiercely. On the night she was captured, she hadn't been out to collect gold coin for a contract. No, she'd got into that to get revenge for the sort of loss he couldn't begin to imagine."
Oh, God.
I'm just here to fuck up George's night with Sam Cortland trauma.
Oh my God.
It's so bad because I just finished Assassin's Blade.
If anyone is hearing heavy breathing while Brian is reading these quotes, it's Georgia, just anticipating the shot she's about to drink for the trauma she's experiencing.
Literally. So the next chapter, Celaena basically has to play guard at a state dinner, and Dorian sees the way that she's looking at Kale and he really struggles with it. So we get this quote: "How long have you been yearning for him?" was what he really wanted to ask. Damn him for caring. Damn him for every moment he'd spent with her.
Oh, Dorian.
I'm not. Oh no, it's not traumatic enough. I'm gonna be picky about my trauma. Celaena,
yeah, you got to be picky.
Yeah, Celaena and Dorian end up basically fighting when she goes to try to find him, and then she ends up just leaving him and going to Caltain's cell to have a quick yarn with her.
Oh, yes.
Yarn.
A chin wag.
Chin wag.
Well, she ends up feeling a little bit bad for Caltain, so much so that she gives her her cloak. But Caltain then has a moment of weird clarity where she tells Celaena they brought her here to the court not to marry Lord Cuntington, but to use her for some other purpose. She then goes a bit batshit crazy again and starts talking about her memory being shards of a broken mirror reflecting different images. She also mentions how the guards turn away when Lord Cuntington comes to visit her at night. Or, no, he's not a lord, he's a duke. And it's like, just when we thought the little fat man couldn't get any worse, of course he's a rapist.
We then get this other quote, which is, "Caltain wrapped Celaena's cloak around herself. Something is coming," she whispered, "and I am to greet it."
Oh, God.
Yikes.
Big yikes. Big yikes. Nehemia and Celaena talk about how things used to be better. Like, there used to be the court in Terrason that was like this noble court. And Nehemia asks if Celaena thinks we'll ever see a court like that rise again.
It's all clicking into place now. I'm seeing
So
these
like
quotes again.
the clogs are turning and they're all joining.
But at this stage as well, Celaena is just either not answering or she's actively being like, I'm not participating in anything.
Yeah. So
This is very much like...
Nehemia obviously knows who she is, right? Which she's known from the get-go.
You'd assume so.
You would assume so.
At this stage, we think from the minute maybe she was staring at Celaena's forehead in Throne of Glass.
Oh, that's right. With the little blue jizz mark.
Yeah, blue jizz. The blue finger painting on her head. So Dorian and Kale are then talking, but again, there's still this lingering tension between them and things just aren't really vibing.
I thought that said fingering.
They're just not really fingering at the moment.
They're like, that's a different way to repair a friendship.
I was like, oh, is there not? Okay.
Read that room differently.
It's not gay if it's your finger.
Oh dear.
Celaena gets ready for dinner with Archer and we get this dress, which is like on the back of the book, FYI. Like the red with the lace back.
Oh,
it's
that
gorgeous. She goes to walk out and Kale sees her and he's like, what in the actual fuck is that?
What in the fresh hell?
Too much. That is not weather appropriate. And she's like, it's fine. I'm gonna go out and possibly fuck him. And she's like, oh my God.
He is so distressed by this information.
So distressed.
Celaena and Archer end up getting to dinner to catch up.
So, like, they're having dinner to catch up because when she was being trained as an assassin, Archer was being trained as a courtesan. So they were in the same circles because Arabin and Clarice, their bosses, were besties.
It took me a longer time than I'd like to admit to realise what a courtesan was. I was like, is he a fancy assassin? No. Not quite.
Oh.
Kills them.
He kills that pussy.
if his
Or
sperm was
anus.
arrows.
He has male and female clients.
He does.
He kills the anus and the vagine.
His penis is a weapon.
So, yes, Celaena and Archer get to dinner. They catch up on all things because, obviously, as Bryony said, they were friends or at least very close acquaintances. And on the carriage ride home, we get this. He murmured onto her skin, "Do you want to come inside?" She swallowed hard. "Don't you want a night off?" This was not what she expected, and this was not what she wanted, flirting aside. And we also get, she took a steadying breath and looked him in the eye. It was time. The king sent me to kill you.
Archer is like, get fucked. But also, can we negotiate? And she makes this comment that he moves faster than she was anticipating and pulled a hidden dagger out that she wasn't anticipating. So he's just full of surprises. And the quote we get is, "I've only heard my clients whispering about it every now and then. There's a group that's formed right here in Rifthold, and they want to put Aelin Galathinius back on Terrason's throne." Celaena says, "Aelin is dead." But Archer says that these people don't agree with that statement. Interesting.
Very interesting.
Little naive Ellie was like, she must be dead. Or she faked her death and she's someone else who we have not yet met. Wrong.
Close.
Incorrect.
Close, though.
Incorrect. Well, Celaena offers Archer a deal. Fake his death now, or he has 4 weeks to give her intel and then fake his death.
Either way, he's got to fake his death.
He's got to sort of shit.
He does. And he needs to die.
All roads lead back to faking your death.
Or dying.
Or death.
Yeah.
Itself.
Actual death, not fake death.
Well, he agrees with the first option, which was to fake his death within a month. And he's like, I can get you information tomorrow night. Just so happens there's a ball with my mates and there's going to be people there who you're going to want to speak to. And she's like, right, pencil that on in my diary.
Deal.
Put that in the Google calendar.
Google calendar.
Everyone knows.
I thought you were going to say put that in the cooch. Put that in the
Just write it down.
Tuck it up
roll
there.
it up. That's what we're balling up. And then we just insert
it in there. So in the morning, when we take our morning juice, we can see.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's right. These are my appointments.
Philippa, can you just put this on the diary?
Just write that down for me, please. Mind the smell.
Gog's dead. Gog's done.
Oh my god, I'm actually crying. Oh no.
Well, turns out she just memorised that. She didn't actually roll it up into a little ball and shove it up her cooch.
Put it in a cooch.
No, she did not. So she meanders back to the castle now, and Celaena gives Kale a little bit of an update. The conversation turns to a bit of bickering, which is usual between the two of them, but then we get this quote. He took a step toward her, but she held her ground. Believe me, Celaena, he snarled, his eyes flashing. I know you can look after yourself, but I worry because I care. God's help me. I know I shouldn't, but I do. So I will always tell you to be careful, because I will always care what happens.
Okay, that's pretty traumatic. I should probably take a shot.
Good.
Yes. So Celaena goes to Archer's ball. Archer sneaks her into one of his clients' offices, and I'm pretty sure it's a guy called Davis.
He's one of us.
It's one of
He
us.
is.
One of us. Yeah, look, me and Bryony both have the same last name. It's beautiful, wonderful, and we are not related, but we are in fact married. So, anyway, he brings her to this client's office, and she finds a book with a blood red word mark on it. And she basically opens the book to find that it is full of word marks. The client ruins her sneaking around, though, and she has to try to play the part to get out of it. So she's like, oh my goodness, I am so lost. I have no idea where I am. He's like, I don't fucking believe you. And she ends up getting poisoned in the tussle, but she ends up killing him absolutely beautifully. And then she is then running back to the castle before the poison kicks in. We get this quote. There was one door down this hall that she had to reach, one room where she'd be safe. She kept her hand on the stone wall, counting the doors she passed, so close. Her cloak caught on the handle of a door as she passed by and ripped away. So basically she's traveling down the castle halls trying to find her way to someone. She ends up finding Kale's door. She walks into his room and she's able to basically tell Kale that she's been poisoned with, what is it called? Gloriella, just before she passes out.
And I will say, this scene with Kale did something to my insides.
It did.
Because, so she's like appeared at the door. She's dishevelled, covered in blood.
Oh my God, I just literally, you doing that reminded me of the episode of The Simpsons, you know, where Lisa's like, I am the lizard queen. she's got the blanket wrapped around her, she's like,
yes. I am the lizard queen.
Oh no.
Kale, like, so she's appeared in the door like the lizard queen. And then Kale is like at his desk and he sees her, so he stands up in alarm, and then she's like passing out and he's running through his office, like tearing shit up, kicking things aside to get to her. Oh, it's so
He doesn't
good.
even have to, there's nothing in his way, but he just runs to the table just to kick things.
Throw things up.
Just to make it.
We just love a mortal peril trope.
Oh my God.
He's so scared that she's just shown up covered in blood and passing out. That what's the first thing that you do in that situation, ladies? Tear off that person's clothing.
Absolutely.
Because
I mean, if you tell me that Henry Cavill's showing up, then I'm like, I've got to look for an injury.
I do.
You better get these trousers off, buddy, because I've got to look.
Is it on these abdominals?
Is it? No. Is it in your rectum?
It's like, it's not gay if it's a finger.
No. So of course he's taken off her clothes because he's like, I must assess for injury. And then he's like, oh wait, no, she did tell me that she was poisoned. So yes, no, there would be no injury. Moving on. So he ends up looking after her, and my heart just fucking bursts. Here are some quotes. He was glad Davis was dead, because if Davis had survived, Kale would have gone back to finish the job himself. And it's like, but you don't kill people. But now he does kill people.
He would kill Celaena.
He would. And one of my favourite quotes of all time. She'd hardly known where she was going while the Gloriella tore through her. All she had known was that she had to get someplace safe. And somehow she had wound up exactly where she knew she'd be the safest. That's a shot. Too. That's a fucking shot.
So once Celaena is back up and running after her little Gloriella shenanigan, she's exploring the library and goes, you know what, I bet there's a secret passage here. This old architecture has given me the vibe, so I'm going to look. And that's about it. In Dorian's point of view, he wakes up freezing cold from a nightmare, and he thinks that maybe there was like a ring of frost around where he was sleeping, but it's gone in a flash, so maybe it was a trick of the light.
Wasn't there a scene in the last book where she goes to see him and he's like really, really cold? There was. Oh my God, they're fire and ice. They'd make a fantastic ice skating duo.
Oh my God.
Where I thought that was going, not there.
Not there.
Back in Celaena's point of view, while she's doing that secret passage thing we just left her with, she finds that secret passage and finds records of the palace. However, there's also like a breeze from further down the hall that smells of iron. She follows it and finds a solid iron door that she can't open. And at that stage, like the eye of Celaena necklace that she's wearing is also glowing and warm.
Yeah, so it's like danger, don't enter. So Celaena's like, ha.
I must.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
But imagine that, you're just sitting by yourself and all of a sudden this breeze comes towards you in a building with no windows open. And you're like, I must follow that scent. I must. It smells like, particularly iron.
No. So Celaena eats in the Great Hall because a singer called Raina Goldsmith is performing. We get this beautiful quote. And when she sang, the whole world faded. Her voice was soft, ethereal, the sound of a lullaby half remembered. The songs she sang, one by one, held Celaena in place. Songs of distant lands, of forgotten legends, of lovers forever waiting to be reunited. Not a single soul stirred in the hall. Even the servants remained along the walls and in doorways and alcoves. Raina paused between songs only long enough to allow a heartbeat of applause before the harp and violin began anew, and she hypnotized them all once more.
Oh,
I'm doing a shot.
I love
because that is just the most beautiful, and this is something that I love about this series, is that Celaena doesn't lose her love for music throughout the entire way through. It is such like an anchor for her, and she's just fucking sobbing. Like, it just breaks me. Anyway.
I love the way that Sarah J Maas, like, there's a couple characters throughout a couple series, and music really has such a beautiful place in their soul, and it just, the way it helps them see the world and cope is just really lovely.
It's so beautiful. Even Feyre with Under the Mountain, and like, there's that, I don't know if you guys have heard, Kelsey Woods. She is someone that I found on TikTok who has made these instrumental musical pieces about certain chapters in ACOTAR.
Oh, yeah.
And it is like orchestra pieces of certain, and she like gives you the chapter that you can read along with her music and feel how she felt while she was reading and things like that. And it just honestly is the most like it's breathtaking, like what she does. And it's just like amazing. So I love how Sarah J Maas does that. I totally agree with you, Bryony.
right. Well, then Raina goes, you know what? Fuck it up. She starts singing a forbidden song about Faye, and Celaena starts crying during the performance, which really should have been a fucking red flag for me, you would have think, hey? Yeah, you would have thought it. No, was not. Because you know what I was distracted by? Kale. Because she's crying and she's trying to cover it up because she doesn't want to cry in front of everyone. And Kale just slides his hand underneath the table and holds her hand. And then she looks at him and he looks at her and they just smile. And it's beautiful. And I'm just obsessed with it.
I honestly believe that Kale loved Celaena. Celaena particularly. Only Celaena.
Yeah. And at
what
this
about
stage as
Aelin?
well,
What about her?
keep in mind right now,
No, I mean, like, that's exactly what I think. I think because at the end of the book, he goes through this spiral of like, she's his enemy. And I'm like, I think he loves Celaena.
Yes, who he thought she was.
And as well, he's standing between her and the royal family.
Always.
He is.
Like,
this is when Kale really stepped up for me, and I was like, I love Kale now. And then towards the end of the book, with everything that happened with Nehemia, it was very like, oh, this has really let me down.
Speaking of the royal family, Dorian at this stage is watching Celaena and Kale's little beautiful moment, and he is like, well, just fuck me then, that's fine. Because both his boyfriend and his girlfriend are not dating him.
No.
And the quotes we get are, quote 1, she had never looked at him like that. Not once. Not even for a heartbeat.
Oh, Dorian.
Quote 2, he would move on because he would not be like the ancient kings in the song and keep her for himself. She deserved a loyal, brave knight who saw her for what she was and did not fear her. And he deserved someone who would look at him like that, even if the love wouldn't be the same, even if the girl wouldn't be her. So Dorian closed his eyes, took another long breath, and when he opened his eyes, he let her go.
Rest in peace, my fucking liver tonight.
But that's a very quick way of doing it. He just closed his eyes, came to that understanding.
Heartbreak? No.
In his mind, he's like, sashay away. Healed.
That quote, it just broke my heart because, as I said, I think Dorian misconstrued his love for Celaena as a companion, as a love, as in he was in love romantically with her, which is really unfortunate.
And he just loves love.
He does,
He
and
just loves love.
And it doesn't matter what. When he loves someone, he loves them so fully, and I think that is such a beautiful quality of Dorian, even though it is a fault to a
What
to a
he
certain
would be
point.
good for? He would be amazing on The Bachelor.
Oh, he would. Oh, he would lap that shit up. He would be like,
He's like, none of you are going home.
None
"You're
of
all
you.
coming home with me."
You are. You all get a rose.
Congratulations. You're all Queen of Ireland. Anyways, Hours later, the king executes Rena Goldsmith. Notably, while she is being held to the stocks and the man is slicing her head off, she's reciting the list of her dead. So she's like, this was my sister's name. This is what you did to her. This was my nephew's. This is what you did to them, as she's executed.
Up, sis. Celaena and Nehemia are eating breakfast, and it takes a very sharp turn. Nehemia goes to Celaena. I want you to look at me in the eye and tell me that you think your freedom is worth this price.
I'm just going to say one real quick thing, okay? Just one, and no comments. Nameless is my price.
Oh.
Hang on.
It's mentioned a couple times in this book.
It is. It is.
Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting.
So Celaena ends up telling Nehemia about how she isn't actually killing people, and then she shows her Elena's tomb. They discover some riddles amongst the word marks, but Nehemia basically assures her that it all basically means nothing. And the night continues on. Celaena's like, cool, all right, no worries. I totally believe Nehemia 150%. She's my bestie. That's all G and all gravy.
Why would she lie to me?
Why would she ever lie to me? And then she has to go stand on guard duty that night. So that's, yeah. The next chapter, Kale was like, damn, Celaena, she's in a fucking bad mood. But it's fine, whatevers. We don't even care. Until she leaves her post, and he's like, what the fuck are you doing, bitch? And he goes to investigate, and then we get this quote. Cal spotted her. Well, she'd certainly abandoned her post, but not to face some potential threat. Cal crossed his arms. Celaena had left her post to dance.
Because she's the dancing
I'm not taking the shot yet, because there's more to come. There's more to come.
There is. So she spins and comes face to face with Kale, and she begins to splutter out a defense, and Kale's just staring back at her in silence. And she's feeling a little bit embarrassed about this whole situation and is trying to like dance around the subject. And he, thus far, has been staying on the side of not being romantic with her. He's like, you know what? I can't get into this. No. But you know what he does? Do you know what this motherfucker does? He says, dance with me, Celaena. And then we have this quote. When her eyes found his, she forgot about the cold and the moon and the glass palace looming above them. The secret library and the king's plans and Mort and Elena faded into nothing. She took his hand and there was only the music and Kale.
All of the feelings.
George is having a shot. They start to dance and it's everything I have ever wanted and more.
Oh.
They're in their guard uniforms, which somehow makes it even more romantic. But I saw someone comment on Goodreads that they thought this was a major plot flaw of the book. Because why would the world's most lethal assassin leave her post to go dance? And I'm like, because she is the world's most lethal assassin. So she kind of can
literally.
Do that. And yeah, like that's the point.
She's already assessed all the threats.
She's fine.
Yeah.
She's fine. Honestly, she could be jacking Cal off and dancing with some other bloke at the same time and still have everything under control.
Yeah.
She's a woman. She can multitask that
She
shit.
could be jacking off too, taking one in each
She
hole. She could be absolutely...
She could. She could.
It's maracas.
She's shimmying down those shafts. Oh, dear God.
Anyway.
We get my favourite quote, which, Georgia, prepare your shot.
Oh.
In that moment, after 10 long years, Celaena looked at Kale and realised she was home.
Oh,
and you cannot tell me that this doesn't last, because it has to fucking last. How? She doesn't just move houses. She is home with him.
But just to flash back to the royal family again, because remember Dorian exists.
Oh, go
so
away.
he's just watching. And at this stage, Nehemia comes to stand next to him and tells him to let them be. And she's basically like, we have burdens they will never understand, you know? But she also takes the opportunity to challenge Dorian on his stance, because at this stage, she's been standing up for Ilway and trying to challenge Ardalan when she can. And she's causing waves, and Dorian's just trying to play it safe. He's just trying to keep shit together. But she challenges him. And at this stage, Dorian is also like, he will move mountains for the people he loves, but he is still standing by while, like, the evil empire occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get this quote. This isn't the place for this conversation. Nehemia stared at him for a long moment before nodding. You have power in you, Prince. More power than you realize. She touched his chest, tracing a symbol there too, and some of the court ladies gasped, but Nehemia's eyes were locked on his. It sleeps, she whispered, tapping his heart. In here. When the time comes, when it awakens, do not be afraid. She removed her hand and gave him a sad smile. When it is time, I will help you.
Oh, for
And
fuck's sake.
Dorian feels things after this, and not horny things for once. He's actually just kind of like, whoa, that's got the tinglies in a different non-STD related way.
It is not chlamydia.
No.
In fact, it is just the magic tingles.
At this stage, also, we flash forward, and Celaena tells Archer that he basically has a week to get her intel to work with. She's running out of time to fake why she's keeping him alive and hasn't killed him. We flash forward, and Dorian's in a council meeting and is shocked at the number of slaves in the Calcutta slave mines, which is like the sister mine to Endovia. Dorian is noticing that Roland, Parrington, and the king all have matching rings. Isn't that interesting? Dorian argues against the sheer number of slaves in Calcutta, but the king shuts him down. And Dorian votes no to expanding on that more and storms out of the meeting. He ends up finding like a secret corridor to try and get some privacy and punches the wall, and it smashes out a nearby window. Debris scatters, but it forms a perfect circle of protection around him.
Isn't that very
interesting?
Strange. Very unusual, but we're just going to yeet straight past that, and we're going to go straight on to Celaena and Kale being very cute and hanging out. And Kale falls asleep after they eat chocolate cake, and we get this beautiful moment. She thinks about a world where they could be a normal boy and girl, and ends up running her fingers through his hair and touching his face before she leaves, which is very sweet. It's like a, oh God, it's so dramatic. And when she leaves, she goes to her own rooms, and when she gets to her room, she finds Dorian standing outside. He's basically looking for Nehemia, but something seems very, very wrong. Like, he seems like he's very stressed, and he basically just leaves without telling her anything. And she's like, okay, cool, no worries.
Well, now we're in Kale's point of view, and he was awake.
He was stressed.
But he was stressed and he was just pretending to be asleep. But now he's back to being loyal to the king and Dorian, which is just like, oh, that's fucking boring.
Yeah.
Find a new hobby.
Backslide.
Turns out there's a carnival arriving, and the king makes Kale get guards to watch the grounds because, of course, he needs to dispatch guards. That's his job.
It's part of his job.
He then tells Kale that Nehemia needs to be watched. He says that there is an anonymous threat to her life, and he tells Kale not to tell anyone, and Kale is like, you know what? Nothing sounds suspicious with that. I agree. Shall not tell a soul. Your secret dies with me.
Evil colonizer being like, do not warn your assassin girlfriend that her best friend is in danger.
In the wise words of Hayley and Hilary Duff, our lips are sealed.
Been a hot minute since the dust was brought up. At this stage, Dorian is sparring with one day to work off his excess anxiety when Roland comes to try and like keep the peace with him. And he's like, nah, I'm just like playing a part. Nothing to see here. Dorian leaves sparring and then encounters Kale and Celaena in the carnival as it's setting up. There's like this old woman with iron teeth there, aka Iron Teeth Witch Baba Yellowlegs.
Oh, not Baba Yellowlegs. She's not. She's the cousin. She's the cousin of Baba Red Legs and Baba Orange Legs.
She's like a Crayola pack. What colour are you going to pick up next?
Oh my God. Well, the Crayola pack yellow ends up scaring Celaena enough that, like, Celaena is literally physically backing the fuck up. And Dorian ends up pulling them away because he's like, oh my God, Celaena, what the fuck? It's just a fake witch. And then we get this quote, which is, the witch was grinning at him as she used a long metallic nail to pick out something from her teeth. Hide from fate all you like, Baba Yellowlegs said as they turned away. but it shall soon find you.
That is fucking weird. I don't like that one bit.
No.
Dorian ends up gifting Kale a rare horse. And Dorian's like, oh my god, Kale, it's your birthday. What else are you doing? And Celaena's like, actually, no, he's not available because we have plans and you're not invited. And he's like, oh, fuck me then.
We're busy.
And the quote is, Kale quickly looked back at the horse as Celaena and Dorian faced each other. Whatever familiar expressions he'd once worn were now gone, and part of her, the part that had spent so many nights looking forward to seeing that handsome face, truly mourned it. Looking at him became difficult.
Oh, no. I suppose I should probably take a shot for that. No, I'm going to wait because I've only got minimal shots.
You put that shot down.
I've got minimal shots left.
Look, Celaena ends up leaving the boys as she realises that the gap, that she'd seen this gap in the tomb and thought it would fit something. And then she was like, wait a minute, what if it would fit my necklace? So then she races on back and it does not fit the necklace and nothing happens.
I really thought it was going to go somewhere, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, this is it. We're going to find out what's going on. Another clue. No.
Moore actually ends up laughing at her, and that's actually quite funny.
Yeah, Moore is a sassy bitch.
He's like, you thought that was going to work? Ha ha ha, you are wrong. Celaena ends up having a nightmare, and she has the nightmare basically every single year on the same day, which is not coincidental at all because of the fact that she also aligns that with the date of her parents' death. Awesome. She's basically next to a river and a white stag looks at her. We get this quote. As if she could ever forget the day when everything she had loved had been wrenched from her. And she had awoken covered in blood that was not her own. It's very sad.
I don't know why we laugh at
We
that.
don't know why she... It's probably because Georgia's drunk and she's trying to tell these very, very sad quotes while she's drunk.
We're like, ha ha ha, trauma.
Celaena leaves the castle before dawn and she doesn't show up to train with Kale. Kale obviously goes to talk to her and he finds Nehemia. Nehemia smiled sadly because today is the 10th anniversary of her parents' death. So that's super traumatic. We go straight from that into a quote that is from Kale's point of view, which is, Kale's breath caught. He remembered her screaming at the duel with Cain when Cain had taunted her about the brutal murder of her parents. When she'd awoken covered in their blood, she'd never told him anything else, and he hadn't dared to ask. He knew she'd been young, but hadn't realised she'd only been 8. 10 years ago. Terrason had been in upheaval. Anyone who defied Adelin's invading forces had been slaughtered. Entire families had been dragged out of their homes and murdered. His stomach clenched. What horrors had she witnessed that day? Look, that was an extremely traumatic quote to bear. And I also am extremely drunk, so I'm very sorry for taking literally 10 minutes on that quote. So we're just going to down this shot and move on.
Moving on. In Celaena's point of view, we find out that this was the day last year when she had snapped in Endovia, and we get a flashback to that whole scene. A quote from that is, but then she neared the gate and the arrows stopped. She started laughing when she found herself surrounded by 40 guards and laughed even more when they called for irons. She was laughing when she lashed out one last time, one final attempt to touch the wall. 4 more went down in her wake. She was still laughing when the world went black and her fingers hit the rocky ground, barely an inch from the wall. So she went off the deep end. None of the slaves tried to help her because they were like, you're on a suicide march, so we're just going to let you be.
Look, it is fair because she was indeed.
Yeah.
She'd had enough of this life.
Which is fair. I mean, she's been through
enough.
a fucking enough trauma.
She's been through a lot.
The poor sausage. Anyway, we're back in the present time, and Kale waits for her back in her rooms and brings her chocolate cake because he knows her. And of course she wants chocolate cake.
He knows Celaena so well.
They have this beautiful, tender moment where he holds her and he's internally thinking that they should put some distance between themselves, but then his hands are in her hair and around her waist and she starts hugging him back. And at this moment, I just really wanted them to fuck.
Yeah, me too.
But it's a bit of a somber occasion. So maybe not.
Nah, fuck it up.
Well, Celaena ends up saying, I can't tell if I should be ashamed of wanting to hold you on this day or grateful that despite what happened before now, it somehow brought me to you.
Oh, fuck's sake. All right.
George has had a whole bottle of liqueur and
There's still
things
so
are not
much
okay.
trauma left
I
in
know.
even part 1.
We haven't got to the murder yet. Fuck. Anyway, I'm also concerned at this point in time because I know for a fact more love interests are introduced as the series goes on, and my heart belongs with Kale right now, and I'm concerned for my future well-being.
You should be.
Moving on. Dorian is now in the library looking at his family tree just for kicks.
He's like, you know what? Ancestry.com. Let's just
I'll
let
slip it in a
just-
jar and send
me
it
just-
to you. Absolutely. So his family has had a magic drought all the way back to his ancestor, Gavin. Remember Gavin? But Gav had a wife, Celaena. He ends up looking at Elena's family tree, aka the Galathinius family tree. The Galathiniuses founded a great kingdom and they never tried to conquer. They always kept the peace. Dorian ponders if Aelin, who was the heir to the Galathinius line, would have been an ally to him, and thinks about her cousin Aedion, who now serves as one of Dorian's father's loyal generals.
Okay.
Dorian is very stressed, and so he punches the metaphorical drywall again. Whoops. He then decides to ask Baba Yellowlegs some questions, which seems like an awful idea.
So Celaena is nervous because she planned a very super special, beautiful dinner for Kale for his birthday. The tension is building as she takes him to this mystery location. It's like on the top of a rooftop, and this amazing place. It's right on there. It's right at the top of the rooftop. The top.
Would you believe the rooftop is on top of the roof, which is on the rooftop?
She's brought him to the Fey Woman's Garden that is referred to in Raina Goldsmith's song. The one that they cried to. It's very emotional. I'm very emotional. Should I take another shot yet, or should I just wait?
Oh, for fuck's sake. There's too much trauma, Georgia. Ellie, take it away. We don't have time.
Celaena says she was planning to bargain for her life and leave, and Kale decides that he will go with her. The quote is, Georgia, get ready for your drink. I would be the greatest fool in the world to let you go alone.
We're going to top that quote right off with Celaena is basically crying. And she tells Carol that he reminds her of how the world ought to be and what the world can be. And Kale kisses her.
Things are getting steamy.
Oh, yes.
They go back to the castle and they're all like fondling each other in the carriage. She gets very excited about something that he does to her ear. But anyways,
Wait, Willie.
you're no longer a virgin.
It might hurt a little bit. Hold still.
So she thinks she had waited once before, waited with Sam, and then it had been too late. I'm just going to keep bringing up the Sam trauma just for kicks, but anyways. Celaena and Kale cuddle in bed the next morning after fucking, and it's all sunshine and rainbows. Everything's great. They agree to keep their relationship a secret to protect themselves from the king's wrath. All well and good. I love that she is like, well, I would be bragging about banging me because my love for myself knows absolutely no bounds.
Have you seen this vagine?
Have you seen my pussy?
Have you seen this?
Because, reminder, Dorian did jump off the cliff of Power of the Pussy. So, yeah, so they basically agree along with that to not tell Dorian for obvious reasons. Dorian proceeds with his bad idea on talking to Baba Yellowlegs, which we just all know is going to be a terrible idea. It's fine. And we learn that the witches are descendants of either the Fae or the Valg, and the Valg are apparently demons, which is awesome, great, wonderful. Basically, when Dorian meets with Baba Yellowlegs, she confirms that magic is gone and that there are some old ways which might be considered magic that survived, but really magic it's yeeted, it's gone, it ain't here anymore. She says that if someone wanted to learn more about magic, that they could start by figuring out why it disappeared in the first place on the continent.
Interesting. Interesting stuff, Baba.
Thank you, Baba.
Thank you, Cut Bubba, who is sponsored by Crayola.
Celaena is following the men Archer told her about and watches them leave town. And Archer appears and confesses. He warns them. And Celaena thinks that maybe these rebels will handle everything and she won't have to make any hard decisions, because of course not. This also seems very suspicious. But we move on almost immediately.
Nothing to
And I
see
do not
here.
think of it again, because we're back with Kale. And Kale is struggling to even stay focused on work due to how much he is in love with Celaena and her pussy.
Vagine.
She has vabbed, and he is like that
She's
those
vabbed
pheromones.
here, there, and everywhere.
We get this cute scene where she pulls him out of a meeting to go fuck in a broom closet. And I am here for this. I fully support these decisions. It's risky, but I love it.
Me
We
too.
all love the broom
love it.
closet, janitor closet type vibe. We fucking love
Yep.
it.
We do.
But we go from that to Celaena and Nehemia are talking about their lives, which we all know is going to be extremely traumatic and great and wonderful and not terrible in the slightest sense. But they are also gossiping about their sex lives, like all friends do. Obviously, us, Exhibit A. Celaena feels hope for the first time in years that Nehemia is happy for her. But the conversation takes a really dark turn when Nehemia says that the king has asked her to speak with the rebels to basically stop them from moving forward. Nehemia asks Celaena to promise to help her free her people. Nehemia and Celaena are basically talking about the amount of people they would be able to raise together, the army that they would be able to raise together, the host they would be able to raise together to free Ilway. But Celaena is basically like, look, it ain't gonna work. It ain't my cup of tea. I'm just in it to get myself out of this, which I'm not mad at Celaena for doing, because she has been through a lot.
Yeah.
And really, she does deserve just to have some peace and quiet in her life for just a hot minute.
She does. She does. So they begin to argue, and Nehemia starts slinging shit at Celaena, asking if she will only ever stand for herself, what will it take to push Celaena over the edge to act. And there's like this quote from Nehemia. It's folly to fight for what is right for people who cannot stand up for themselves. You think soldiers are the worst he can send? There are far darker things gathering on the horizon. My dreams have been filled with shadows and wings, the booming of wings soaring between mountains and passes, and every scout and spy we send into the White Fang Mountains, into the Ferrian Gap, does not come back. Do you know what the people in the valleys below say? They say they can hear wings too, riding the winds through the gap. When Celaena still refuses to help and refuses to help Nehemia get herself killed, in her words, Nehemia calls her a coward. Celaena tells Nehemia not to come crying when it all goes wrong and storms out.
Yikes.
We then get this fucking horrifying chapter where we discover a queen speaks to a princess and says that one of them has to break. They say that the prince isn't ready and that the princess will have to pay a price to set things in motion. And we now know who that princess is, and I'm not pleased with this development.
It's a lot, isn't it? So, Ellie, just for your thoughts on this entire scene, what are your thoughts about the entire... Like, who do you think is who? What is happening?
Okay, so right now I think the prince is Dorian.
Yep.
And the princess could either be Celaena or Nehemia.
Okay.
And the queen is Elena.
Like the princess that the person... Do you mean the princess that the queen is speaking to, or the princess they're talking?
Okay, so who do you think they're talking about then?
I think they're talking about Nehemia setting things in motion because she knew she was going to die.
Yeah.
And I think the prince is Dorian.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's a lot of... I was seeing some people talk online and they didn't realise until like their like third reread that this chapter is Nehemia talking to Elena.
I kind of got that.
About... Yeah, a bunch of people did.
That was the first thing I noticed, was the fact that it's very obvious to me that Elena was speaking to Nehemia, speaking about Celaena, but when she was mentioning princess, that's when the first signs of Aelin started to come into my head, and I was like, oh, that is what she is. And then obviously Dorian was Dorian. So,
well, I sort of had already assumed that Celaena was Aelin back from when Elena was sort of talking about blood ties in the first book.
See,
I
think I skipped over that fucking part because I was like, oh, I forgot that was there.
Well, it's funny because I was still shocked when she said it. I don't know if it's because of the storytelling within this book that just made me forget, and because I was so invested in the romance and all the other shit happening that I didn't really care, that I'd already kind of knew.
I think Sarah is a Sarah is a master.
The master.
So, of breadcrumbs, all these little things that you read and you don't really think much of, but you've still absorbed it, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, so maybe it makes sense in retrospect, and at the time it might have been different, but currently reading it, it is certainly Nehemia's talking to Elena about Celaena and Dorian, which I don't understand where Dorian fits into that, like if he's not ready, but I kind of feel like he's more ready than Celaena is at the moment, because he's at least exhibiting like his power, and she at this point hasn't.
Look,
that's fair.
That's a very valid point.
Basically, Chaol was on a hunting party in the next chapter with the king, and he's with a bunch of other lords, and he ends up riding with the king and thinking how scary the king is when the king goes like full villain, which is fair enough. He will basically be questioning Nehemia in his chambers tomorrow night, and he needs men stationed outside of her room and, protecting the area. So basically the subtext of that entire situation is like, don't tell your assassin lover that this is going on. And then as the day goes on, Dorian then realizes that Chaol has like the post-fuck glow, and he says to him like, look, fair, all's love is war, like, treat her well. Fuck it up.
Fuck that pussy up, is what he says to him.
Yeah, fuck that pussy up, Chaol.
Yeah. Chaol decides that he will not tell Celaena about the threat to Nehemia or Nehemia being
beautiful
questioned.
Choice.
And he
Chaol. It's a really top.
He justifies
Chaol.
it.
It's a really good choice.
It is a really great choice, Chaol.
Chaol justifies it by thinking that the king won't do anything to her because she's such a public figure, as if this isn't the man that has conquered foreign nations
has
for
literally
sport.
Been like, oh, you're dead.
You're dead.
In fact, you're
dead.
Everyone look under your chairs. You all get death.
You all get death. Well, we then have a daydream, and it's Chaol daydreaming about a possible future with Celaena as his wife, and their incredibly talented and stubborn children that they would have. And it's all beautiful. But then someone just pops out from behind him and knocks him the fuck out. And I'm like, I'm slightly concerned about the lax security in this facility, I must say.
Yeah.
Are we ready for trauma, guys?
I don't have any shots left, but yes, absolutely.
So, Celaena wakes up in bed alone and is daydreaming. She spends the day spying on a list of people from Archer, and then is like, oh, Chaol's still not here for dinner, but that's fine. And then she starts to be like, maybe that's not fine. And the quote we get is, Chaol was captain of the guard. He held his own against her every day. He'd bested her in their first sparring match. Yet Sam had been her equal in many ways too. And he'd still been caught and tortured by Rourke Farron, still died the most brutal death she'd ever seen.
Oh,
and if Chaol, she was running now, like Sam. Chaol was admired by almost everyone, and when they'd taken Sam from her, it hadn't been because of anything Sam had done. No, they'd done it to get at her. She runs to Chaol's room and finds a ransom note and decides that, you know what, maybe she will start killing people for real. If they wanted Ardalin's assassin, they'd get her, and word helped them when she arrived.
Oh my fucking god, I am too drunk for this type of scenario.
In Chaol's point of view, he's awake, albeit chained up by masked men. The hooded figures were waiting for something, and the quote is, she has until dawn. She'll show up. She. That word was the worst thing he'd ever heard because there was only one she who would bother to show up for him, one she that he could be used against.
God. And he's basically verbally sparring with one of the men that are in this building. He's basically an educated warrior who hates royals. When we get this beautiful fucking moment, which is, how about a damned fool, Kale said. I don't think you realize who you're dealing with. The man clicked his tongue. If you were that good, you would be more than the captain of the guard. Kale let out a low, breathy laugh. I wasn't talking about me. She's just a girl. Though his guts were twisting at the thought of her in this place, with these people, though he was considering every possible way to get himself and Celaena out of here alive, he gave the men a grin. Then you're really in for a surprise.
Oh,
I love it.
Oh,
I
that
love
quote.
it. I love it so much.
This whole bit, I'm going feral.
Literally,
for.
I am right there with you, girl. Let's fucking go.
Celaena is done. She is a creature of vengeance at this point and is out to fuck shit up. The quote we get is, she'd been called Ardlan's assassin for a reason. Dramatic entrances were practically her art form. So she's found the warehouse they're holding Kaylee and has snuck past the guards, thinks they're all lesser than because they are. And she's literally looking through a window at Kale tied up and she's like, well, that is unacceptable. So she decides to launch herself through a window, but not before she's thinking about that the last time she had to do a jump like this, it was to save Sam and she had failed. This time she would not fail. So next minute, Kale looks up to see a glint of moonlight on her weapons and Celaena flies through the window and goes, Grandmummy, it's me, Anastasia.
No. She does not.
I'm not kidding you. I was so ready to literally be me crying in this entire scene, and then you come out with that fucking shit. I just read Assassin's Blade, okay? For anyone that's watching, I just read Assassin's Blade, so I know what she's talking about right now. And I'm very distressed. Okay, anyway. We bypassed the grandmummy, it's me, Anastasia, because I can't deal with that trauma right now, and we fucking yeet it. So, we get to this part. As Celaena unleashes herself on the men, Kale is a little bit conflicted. And we get this quote, and at last, after all these months, he saw the lethal predator he'd expected to find at the mines. There was nothing human in her eyes. Nothing remotely merciful. It froze his heart.
One of the kidnappers tries to stop the carnage and is like, enough! We have enough enemies as it is. There are worse things out there to face. And Celaena slowly turned to him, her face splattered with blood and eyes blazing bright, and says, no, there aren't, because I'm here now. No. She's got off the
I'm obsessed with her.
You know how Dorian yeeted off the
love cliff? She's like vengeance. Next minute, she's standing on a building in Gotham being like, I am Batman. Well, she is an orphan, actually. Oh
no, that makes Kale Robin. Well, Ardlan's Batman isn't ready for the fighting to end just yet. So she keeps things going until guess who appears? It's Archer. Guess what? He set her the fuck up. She frees Kale, but then truth bombs just start falling from the sky. And Archer says he has been working with Nehemia for 6 months to lead this rebel group. Not only that,
scandalous.
Celaena starts to think back on all of Nehemia's actions and all the times she discouraged her to look into the particular people or word marks. And she's like, things just, oh my God, they're all adding up. This can't be happening. And Archer says, they kidnapped Kale because they believed he was going to question Nehemia. And then they realized it was the king. And it's like that logic doesn't track, but go on. And Celaena feels herself fading into a whole new type of dissociation. But it's too late. We can't stop Archer's words because he's just a fucking blabbermouth. Nehemia is about to die, if not already.
Oh my God, I'm so stressed.
just to break your hearts, do you remember how earlier in the book when Celaena was poisoned and running for her life, she ran to where she was safe, which was with Kale. So now she runs, after ending all of these lives, runs away from Kale to try and save Nehemia.
No.
You're welcome. And then also, do you remember how she was just thinking how she failed to save Sam and then was so happy that she'd saved Kale, but now she cannot save Nehemia?
Yeah, but that was good. Keep going. Yep, I love this trauma. I am so in for this trauma. I love being in pain. Keep going. I love it.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
That was literally it now. It's your turn now, Georgia.
Go on, keep going.
Okay, so she is basically running. She is running as fast as she fucking can. She legs it into the castle. Like, and I'm talking like when she's running so fast, Kale is like, how the fuck is she running this fast?
Kale finds a horse and she outruns a horse. She's like, I am not part of the saddle club. Hello world, this is me. I am on the run.
Okay, so she's running as fast as she can. She literally legs it into the fucking castle. She briefly registers Dorian seeing her, but she fucking stops. She's like, I need to get to Nehemia. She's my best friend. What the fuck's going on? We get this fucking quote, which if you haven't taken a shot until this moment, get your shots ready. All right, so the quote is, the blood was everywhere. Before the bed, Nehemia's bodyguards lay, with their throats cut from ear to ear, their internal organs spilling out onto the floor and on the bed. She could hear the sound. I don't know if I'm crying or laughing. It's really traumatic.
Look, it's probably both.
She could hear the shouts growing closer, reaching the room, and their words were somehow muffled, as though she were underwater, the sounds coming from the surface above. Celaena stood in the center of the freezing bedroom, gazing at the bed and the princess's broken body atop it. Nehemia was dead.
All right, guys.
So that's where we're leaving part 1.
See you next week.
But honestly, I can't remember what we said at the beginning, but if we haven't clarified, we're doing the books in parts because we talk so much shit on this is 230 pages. We've been going for hours. So we will be dropping the parts weekly, normal episodes Wednesday night, but the book will be split in 2. We will give you the fan art and our music references in part 2, and we'll give you the spiel of what we thought of the book in part 1. So we hope you enjoyed that traumatic episode. We're super drunk, Georgia. Super drunk.
I have literally 10 set of drinks gone. This is still half full, bear in mind. But this was also a quarter of a bottle of Alizé, so...
Oh, dear God. George needs to have some Hydrolat.
If you would like to donate money to George's partner Aiden to look after her for the next 24 hours, please get in contact with us and we can send you her Venmo details. Otherwise, please remember to like, follow, subscribe. The video of this episode, what you've just listened to, is on YouTube. The audio on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We really need to go to bed.
Good night.
Good night.
Farewell. We love you.
Good night, listeners.
We appreciate you all listening in, and we will see you motherfucking next week. Bye.
Ignore her. Bye.